Hello, this is the Daily Report for Thursday, January 13th here in Korea. The first batch of Pfizer's COVID-19 treatment pills arrives in the country today. We have details on that in a bit after a check on the global pandemic tallies. So to start us off then.
Sure, Sunny. Let's start with our daily number of COVID-19 infections here in the country. 4,167 cases were tallied as of 12 a.m. this Thursday, which is a drop from Wednesday, but not in terms of imported cases, as 391 cases from abroad were tallied, and this is a record high here in the nation. With that, Korea's cases from abroad have also surpassed 20,000 in total. Now, if we go over to our map, there has been a decline in the metropolitan region, but also some upticks in the southern parts of the nation. And if we go over to our graph in the past week, there's been a slight decrease by a little over 200 cases from the day before, but compared to last Thursday, it's a slight rise in infections. And let's go over to the number of patients that are in severe or critical condition. This figure has been declining and standing at 701 as of 12 a.m. this Thursday. Now let's move over to the general figures here. Korea has now tallied over 679,000 infections of the coronavirus with 6,210 fatalities. 44 people have lost their lives in the past day. Let's move over to our vaccination figures. Around 16,200 people got their first shot on the day before, with over 80,500 who got their second one, and also more than close to 280,000 people got their additional shot. With that, 22.1 million people got that booster shot. Let's take a look at the figures abroad. There's been a rise by over 3.4 million new cases in the span of a day around the world, with more than 9,300 fatalities. And onto some specific countries here. Spain has surpassed the total caseload in Germany, and still exponential rises over there in France, with over 360,000 new infections having posted in just a day. And those are the general updates I have for now, but I'll see you back in a bit. Sunny?
All right, so thank you for now. Right, for more coverage of the COVID-19 situation here in the country, Choi Min-jung joins me in the studio. Min-jung, good to see you again.
Thank you for having me.
Right, let's start with the growing concerns here over the number of imported infections in recent days, Min-jung.
Right, Sunny. While infections in the community are declining, imported cases are hitting record highs. Like Suwon mentioned earlier, the country on Thursday confirmed 351 cases from overseas, an all-time high. And what's worrying is that the recent data has shown that 88% of imported cases are Omicron infections. Now, all travelers arriving in Korea until February 3rd must undergo a 10-day quarantine. But given the current situation, authorities say the quarantine requirements are likely to be extended. Scores of cases have also been detected in people returning from the Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas. Around 70 attendees have tested positive for COVID-19 as of Wednesday, and given the large number of travelers and with contact tracing still underway, authorities say the number of CES-related cases is likely to increase. Officials stress that those returning from the event must comply with self-isolation rules upon arrival, and they also advised business people with quarantine exemptions to work at home for 10 days after arrival as a precaution.
Right, and just to clarify, we had 391 imported infections on this Thursday, right? Right, moving forward, Min-jung, do tell us a bit about the arrival of Korea's first supply of COVID-19 pills.
Well, Sunny, the first shipment of Pfizer's oral pill Paxlovid is set to arrive any minute now at Incheon Airport. As I mentioned yesterday, the first shipment will be enough to cover 21,000 people, and we're expecting another 10,000 courses to arrive by the end of this month. This is part of the 76,000 courses in total that the government has purchased from Pfizer. A logistics center in Chungcheongbuk-do province has been assigned to handle the storage of the first batch, and it is scheduled to be distributed to around 280 pharmacies as well as 89 residential treatment centers and administered as early as Friday.
Right, Min-jung, do remind us again a bit about who will be receiving the first pills.
Well, because of the currently limited supplies, priority will be given to seniors aged 65 and over and also those with weak immune systems. But they also have to be receiving the treatment at home or at residential treatment centers. And these people are first in line because they are relatively more at higher risk of becoming severely ill after infection.
Right, and for the sake of our viewers here, what has been shared, Min-jung, about the efficacy, that is, of these treatment pills by Pfizer thus far?
Well, clinical trials have shown that the treatment was 88% effective in reducing hospitalizations and deaths. So the pills are expected to help reduce the number of severely ill elderly patients, as 8 to 9% of people 60 and over develop severe symptoms after contracting COVID-19. And because the pills are designed to stop the virus from replicating inside the body, officials are expecting them to be effective against variants like Omicron as well.
Right, that is good to know. Now, do tell us a bit about the treatment regimen, Min-jung, and the precautions to keep in mind.
Well, there are 3 pills in total, 2 pink and 1 white. And people must take all these 3 pills at once in the morning and once in the evening. Authorities say pills should not be split into smaller pieces and should be ingested whole. They need to be taken daily for 5 days, regardless of how their symptoms progress. The government says it will strictly prohibit the resale of any surplus drugs, and those who do will be fined 50 million won, which is around 42,000 US dollars. This also includes the sharing of drugs among family members. If people were to stop taking the pills due to side effects, they will be advised to return the drugs to a public health center or pharmacy.
Right, and staying with side effects, Min-jung, what are some of the most common ones linked to this particular drug?
Well, some of the side effects that were reported during the clinical trials were diarrhea, rise in blood pressure, muscle pain, and an impaired sense of taste, but they were mostly mild. If people do experience any side effects, they must consult a medical expert. Patients who have suffered from serious side effects may receive compensation if causality can be established. Authorities say those who are breastfeeding, pregnant, or have serious illnesses should consult with a medical expert prior to taking the medicine. People should also note that authorities have designated 28 drug substances that should not be taken together with Paxlovid. So those who are on medication need to be extra cautious.
Right, I see. All right then, Min-jung, as always, thank you very much for the updates and see you on Friday.
Thank you.
Right, on the international front, the global health body has renewed its words of caution with regard to the current spread of Omicron. So I have you here with details on that, right?
Right, Sunny. So the WHO kept its stance on Wednesday that the Omicron variant may cause less severe symptoms than the Delta variant, but it remains a dangerous virus. And that, according to the Director General of the organization, and in particular for unvaccinated people, is what he said. Now, in its most recent epidemiological report, the World Health Organization reported some 15 million COVID-19 cases in the past week globally. And Director General Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus also voiced concerns over fatalities.
Almost 50,000 deaths a week is 50,000 deaths too many. Learning to live with this virus does not mean we can or should accept this number of deaths. We must not allow this virus a free ride or wave the white flag, especially when so many people around the world remain unvaccinated.
Right, so essentially that is yet another vote of confidence for COVID-19 vaccinations, Soa.
Right, Sunny. Essentially, yes, but also no, because the organization continues to push for full vaccination, but not for countries to get multiple booster shots, because many countries that have been seeing resurgences due to the Omicron variant are now opting for a 4th shot. But also Europe's drug regulator, the EMA, has recently stated that there is a lack of data for 4th shots, suggesting repeated inoculations within short intervals may not be an adequate and sustainable method in the long term. Now, what the WHO said on Wednesday regarding this is that despite last year's difficulties in vaccine supply in some parts of the world having eased, there is still a long way to go to reach a target of administering vaccines to 70% of every country's population by the middle of this year. Ghebreyesus noted that that 90 countries have yet to reach the 40% target and that 36 countries haven't even vaccinated 10% of their population. In many nations that are struggling with vaccinations like those in Africa, it's not simply supply shortages that's slowing the vaccination process, but leadership and coordination issues, operation costs, limited cold chain capacity, as well as lack of medical staff.
Right, so I hear the WHO has also addressed the issue of COVID-19 vaccinations for expecting mothers. Tell us more.
Right, Sunny. While there was not much information regarding the effects or risks of vaccines on pregnant women in the early stages of vaccine rollouts, health experts' calls on protecting future mothers appear to be growing with more clinical trials and data available now. According to the WHO, a global webinar was held focused on the clinical management of the coronavirus during pregnancy and childbirth. Citing that meeting, the organization's Director General said pregnant women are not at higher risk of transmitting the virus. However, if they do contract it, they are at higher risk of developing severe symptoms. With that, he stressed the importance of vaccine access for all pregnant women around the world to protect themselves and their babies. And he called on the need for pregnant women to be involved in clinical trials for new COVID-19 vaccines as well as treatments.
I see. Meanwhile, over in the U.S., so pundits believe Omicron will peak in the weeks ahead with the near future.
That's correct. Scientists and authorities are predicting that could be likely in the coming weeks from now, suggested by the pattern of surges of the highly transmissible Omicron variant. So let's take a listen to the director of the U.S. CDC.
The data in this study remain consistent with what we are seeing from Omicron in other countries, including South Africa and the UK, and provide some understanding of what we can expect over the coming weeks as cases are predicted to peak in this country.
The average number of daily cases in the past week stood at about 751,000 a day, according to the director on a Wednesday, which is a hike by 47% from the previous week. The 7-day average of hospital admissions is at close to 20,000 a day, a rise by 33% on week. Deaths have also surged by some 40%, with the virus having claimed about 1,600 lives on average in the past 7-day span. And also the hospitalizations of children is going up as well, especially those that have been not vaccinated. And this is also why many schools have chosen to not open yet, especially because of the surging Omicron variant cases.
Right, so they are taking precautions, of course. So thank you for that. I'll see you on Friday.
My pleasure.
The Biden administration has taken punitive action against North Korea in response to its latest missile testing. A group of North Koreans have been blacklisted for their alleged role in advancing Pyongyang's weapon ambitions. Our Kim Dami reports.
The U.S. has blacklisted 6 North Korean officials in its first response to the regime's latest ballistic missile test. The Treasury Department announced Wednesday that Washington has designated individuals for their roles in procuring equipment and technology for the North's missile programs. 5 of them work for the North's Academy of National Defense Science, which leads Pyongyang's weapons development and had previously been blacklisted by the Obama administration in 2010. The department also named a Russian individual and a Russian organization for a similar reason. The State Department stressed the latest measures are in line with the U.S. efforts to prevent the advancement of Pyongyang's ballistic missile and nuclear programs.
These are important measures to constrain North Korea's ballistic missile and nuclear program. And it's important that the international community send a strong, unified message that the DPRK must halt provocations, it must abide.
U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken also made it clear in a statement that the U.S. will use all appropriate means to respond to the North's WMD and ballistic missile programs. Blinken added the U.S. will continue to pursue dialogue and diplomacy with the North, urging the regime to engage in negotiations. Wednesday's sanctions are the Biden administration's first to specifically target the North's weapons programs. But experts have cast doubt over the effectiveness of the measures.
There are no high hopes for the measures because the North is already slapping sanctions on itself with the border shutdown due to the pandemic. The U.S. still has to take actions other than condemning while keeping its stance on pursuing talks and diplomacy with the North.
The latest sanctions freeze any U.S.-related assets of those targeted and prohibit all dealings with them. An official from South Korea's Unification Ministry said Thursday that Seoul will continue to work with Washington and the international community to revitalize inter-Korean dialogue while urging the North to return to dialogue. Kim Da-mi, Arirang News.
In other news, as part of broader efforts to seek and support new engines of growth, the government here plans to earmark a significant sum of money to develop its vaccine industry. Our Min Soo-kyun has more on this agenda.
South Korea will spend around $5.3 billion to support companies making facility investments to strengthen the country's vaccine and raw material industries. According to Finance Minister Hwang on Thursday, the government plans to develop the vaccine industry as a key sector, just like the semiconductor industry in South Korea. The minister added that the government will continue to support the development of locally produced COVID-19 vaccines and treatments, including antiviral pills. He said the country's first COVID-19 vaccine will be in use in the first half of this year. Hwang added that the government will invest around $300 million in new medicine, medical equipment, and in advanced regenerative medicine. This is part of the country's efforts to invest in the next business growth drivers. Earlier, the government designated system semiconductors, next-generation cars, and biohealth, known as the Big Three industries, as key sectors to focus on. The minister stressed that the government will spare no efforts to support those industries.
We will provide maximum support so that large-scale private investment and human resource training can be carried out without delay in the Big Three sectors.
Along with the Big Three, the government will also strengthen several other industries, such as data, networks, and artificial intelligence, also referred to as DNA. The government plans to spend more on these sectors and has in fact set aside some $10.2 billion this year, following on from the $8.1 billion spent last year. Min Soo-kyun, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, findings by the Bank of Korea show Korea's export prices surged in the year 2021 on the back of escalating oil prices. Import costs also noted the same reality. Our Je-deok has details.
South Korea's export prices in 2021 rose on-year by the most in roughly 13 years. The Bank of Korea says the country's average export prices index for last year stood at 108.29, a jump of 14.3% compared to the previous year. Import prices also soared by 17.6% on-year. The on-year increases in export and import prices in 2021 are the largest increases since 2008. The export prices index is now at the highest point it has been for 8 years, while the imports index is at its highest in 7 years. The central bank attributed the surge to rising global oil and raw material prices amid a supply bottleneck and the low base effect from 2020 due to the pandemic. However, export prices in December fell on month for the second month in a row. The related index was down 1% to 114.6. The decline was mainly because the prices of coal and petroleum products came down by around 5%, led by a fall in global oil prices. But compared to the same month a year earlier, Korea's export prices were up almost 24% in December. Import prices also rose by almost 30% on year. Je-deok, Arirang News.
Starting on this Thursday, Suwon in Gyeonggi-do province enjoys a new status as a metropolitan city that comes with greater autonomy. Our Lee Kyung-eun explains.
Suwon is the largest city in South Korea's most populous province, Gyeonggi-do, which surrounds the capital Seoul. With some 1.2 million residents, it's a similar size as some of the cities that are designated as metropolitan cities. But there has been so little that the city could do on its own. It couldn't even add extra speed cameras or crosswalks due to its status as a small, mid-sized city. Suwon had long called for autonomy and decentralization of power, and those calls have finally been answered. On January 13th, the city was reborn as a so-called special metropolitan city as the revised Local Government Act comes into effect 1 year after being passed. The law grants the same status to 3 other cities that have a population of more than 1 million people. Those are Goyang, Yongin in Gyeonggi-do province, and Changwon, the only such city outside Greater Seoul area. And they will now enjoy the same level of autonomy as metropolitan cities like Busan, Gwangju, and Daegu, like issuing local bonds, granting permission for buildings not more than 51 floors tall, and designating housing or urban development sites. The law will also give residents more welfare benefits. As they are now classed as residents of large cities, they'll get more income deductions for living expenses, meaning more people are eligible for the basic national pension or other welfare assistance. Meanwhile, to boost local autonomy across the whole country, the law stipulates expanding residents' direct participation in decision-making. Local councils will also have greater authority in making policies and independence in appointing members. They will also improve the expertise of members. Although the immediate impact might be limited, the Local Government Act, which has been amended for the first time in 32 years, is largely expected to enhance people's livelihoods and regional competitiveness in the long term. Lee Kyung-eun, Arirang News.
Also on the local front, an annual awards ceremony was held in Seoul this week to acknowledge the contributions of those who served to promote Korea's image on the international arena. Our Kim Bo-kyung was there.
Every year, those who have contributed to enhancing South Korea's image are presented with awards by the Korea Image Communication Institute, and this year is no exception. Among the recipients of the 18th Korea Image Awards that took place at Intercontinental Seoul COEX Hotel on Wednesday was Hwang Dong-hyuk, the director behind the sensational Netflix drama Squid Game. He received Korea Image Stepping Stone Award for helping elevate South Korea's status as cultural powerhouse. Global streaming platform Netflix was awarded with the Korea Image Stepping Stone Bridge Award for allowing South Korean content to stand shoulder to shoulder with foreign content. As a representative of Netflix, Korean content vice president Dong-hyuk said he himself was honored to see South Korean content become hugely successful.
It was such an honorable year for me to see that high-quality content and stories could be recognized, not only domestically but internationally. We are ready to continue creating diverse Korean content that goes beyond the usual storytelling formats or genres.
Globally renowned soprano Sumi received the Cornerstone Award for her continuous dedication to boosting South Korea's image throughout her 35-year music career. Sumi says she now aims to nurture junior classic artists through seminars and master classes.
My dream now is to make junior artists into the full package. I hope to teach them the qualities classic artists need: language, gestures on stage, attitude, and so on. Through seminars and master classes, I will teach them things that it took me great difficulty to learn.
Last but not the least, the winner of Olympic gold medals in the men's and mixed team archery events at Tokyo 2020, Je-deok was honored with the Budding Youth Award. During the pre-awards press briefing, Kim talked about his aims for 2022.
I will soon be competing for a place at the Asian Games, and if I get the chance to go, I will do my best to bring home the gold medal for the men's team.
While the Korean culture boom continues to sweep across the globe, the award winners are recognized as cultural envoys and say they will work even harder to elevate South Korea's image in global society, further emphasizing the country's strong soft power. Kim Bo-kyung, Arirang News.
It's Thursday and time for a check on foreign media coverage of events here in this part of the world. As always, I have Kim Sang-yeon here in the studio with me. Sang-yeon, welcome back.
Great to see you again, Sunny. So as you can imagine, all the buzz throughout the weekend, international media was on Squid Game star Oh Young-soo. And then, of course, a lot of coverage on North Korea with the latest missile test. Also, we're going to come to local issues, the latest employment data, and lastly, a story on kimchi exports that I came across. So let's dive right in. Major foreign media outlets were singing praises for Squid Game star Oh Young-soo this week for winning the Best Supporting Actor in Television Award at this year's Golden Globes. CNN noted that his victory marks the first time a Korean TV drama or actor had been nominated and won the award, adding the triumph was announced at a private online ceremony as this year's Golden Globes was scaled down due to a boycott over ethical issues surrounding the event's organizers. In the meantime, Reuters reported that Oh beat out many high-profile nominees as well, further mentioning that Oh's achievement comes after Yoon Yo-jung won Best Supporting Actress at last year's Academy Awards. The Golden Globes is generally regarded as a bellwether for the results at the Academy Awards later in the year. And in Newsweek, it highlighted that before Squid Game, non-English shows have never been nominated or won in a major category at the Golden Globes before.
Right, quite a remarkable feat right there. Moving on, Sang-yeon, as you mentioned, North Korea topped international headlines this week with yet another show of military might. Tell us more.
Yes, Sunny. So as we know, North Korea on Tuesday test-fired a ballistic missile, and it was for the second time in a week, and the launch occurred as the UN Security Council met at the UN headquarters in New York to discuss the North's last ballistic missile test. So the New York Times cited a defense analyst who say the latest tests indicate that the North has been developing more sophisticated means of delivering nuclear and other warheads. The analyst added that some of the missiles the North has tested since 2019 have used solid fuel and have made mid-air maneuvers, making them more difficult to intercept. Now, AP News was highlighting that Tuesday's launch comes as North Korean leader Kim Jong-un continues to advance his weapons programs in the face of international sanctions, economic recession, and stalled dialogue with the United States. With Tuesday's launch, North Korea appears to be making progress with what it claims to be a hypersonic missile, but experts who spoke to AP pointed out that North Korea needs more successful and longer-range tests that would take several years, perhaps, before such a weapon is actually ready.
I see. Across the border here, back here in South Korea, and on the economic front, like you mentioned, Korea's unemployment rate has fallen to its lowest in 7 years, right?
That's right, Sunny. So it looks like the local labor market is continuing to recover, thankfully, even though the government's new COVID-19 restrictions. In fact, last month, employers here in Korea added the most number of jobs since 2014. So data on Wednesday showed that Korea added 773,000 jobs in December compared to the same period last year. Bloomberg explained that economic uncertainty has been growing recently due to the fast spread of Omicron, but December's figures suggest the labor market has been recovering even as the government added new curbs to fight the pandemic. Bloomberg noted that the government's job report comes at an important time, just days before the next policy meeting by the Bank of Korea, which has strongly hinted at further interest rate hikes. Bloomberg also cited an economist who saw this data as indication that the labor market could become even more robust when the Omicron variant eventually passes, while also reducing inflationary pressure through improvements in the labor supply.
Right, Sung-yeon, staying with the economy, I hear exports of Korea's kimchi hit a new high in the year 2021.
Yeah, Sunny, so the popularity of our side dish kimchi certainly has been growing internationally, with kimchi exports hitting an all-time high last year, according to data. So this story was also covered by Business Standard, with data from Korea's Agriculture Ministry showing that outbound shipments of kimchi came to a record $159.9 million last year, resulting in a trade surplus of $19.2 million in the sector. So this is the first time in 12 years that Korea registered a surplus in the trade of kimchi. And the report further noted that kimchi exports grew an average of 18% annually in the last 5 years. Moreover, the number of importing countries also increased to 89 last year from 61 nations in 2011. Business Standard noted that the rise in kimchi exports comes amid the global popularity of Korean cultural content, and that Hallyu, or the Korean wave, has had a visible knock-on effect on other industries as well.
And hopefully that trend will continue. All right, Sung-yeon, thank you for your coverage.
The pleasure is mine.
Omicron is reportedly sending authorities back to the drawing board with regard to containment strategies as they attempt to tackle surging caseloads. For more, I have Professor Yu Byung-wook from Sooncheng University. Hello, Professor Yu, welcome back. I also have Professor Kim Eun-gyu from Yonsei University. Professor Kim, it's a pleasure to see you again.
Good afternoon.
Right, Professor Yu, U.S. health authorities are reportedly looking to upgrade their mask policy and urge people to avoid cloth masks, which were quite common during the Delta outbreak there. Is Omicron perhaps undermining the effectiveness of our face masks?
Well, I have some agreement of that, and also I have a little bit of the disagreement of these policies. Since the beginning of the COVID crisis, Korea will suggest wear the mask strictly is also labeled at least some of the high number of this, because virus couldn't see the very small particle can be transmitted anywhere. So we use the cotton mask types one, doesn't help. So we need a surgical mask or at a certain level of the mask we have to put on. But I fully understood because European people and North American people have think of a mask mean resistance. Because I loved this movie, the V for Vendetta. So this movie say undercover their identity to be resistant to the political power. That's why Asian people wear a mask mean the protects a person from the certain virus, but European people and the certain Western cultural mask mean the resist. That's why they don't want to wear the mask anyway. That's why the U.S. government and their Public Health Authority recommend different type of mask. Anyway, you have to wear a mask, but from the beginning, never changed. COVID virus can transmit it. So if you will not wear a mask and not prepare wear a mask neither. So we need a certain certified and qualified mask put on can be prevent COVID-19.
Right, and these certified face masks, of course, you're talking about is the KF94 or the KF80 or the KF-AED masks.
Absolutely.
Right. Professor Kim, do you tell us a bit about the most effective way of adorning a face mask?
Well, that means we have to go back to the basic. Everybody knows how to do that, but if we put on CCTV on our face or hands, I think everybody's going to need a re-education how to wear and put down the mask. So we should not touch the mask itself, but the string. And whenever you try to put on or take off the mask, you should not touch the mask itself. I think
if we go back to the lesson we had from the Spanish flu 100 years ago, any kind of mask is better than doing nothing. But I strongly recommend the KF94 or higher because we are entering a Omicron variant season. And there are two reasons we have to wear a mask. One, to protect ourselves. And second, we have to protect others. So mask is protecting myself and others also. It is not recommended to wear a mask for many days. I would say that it's recommended to wear less than 1 day, and you have to change it. Problem is, we touch our faces more than 3,000 times a day unconsciously. So you might have a chance that your hands might be contaminated with the virus already in your mask. So I think that's the reason we need a hand sanitizer, and we have to wash our hands often. One more thing I would like to mention is the mobile phone. You know, if you don't have a mobile, you cannot enter a restaurant. You cannot go anywhere without it right now. And your mobile phone can be a focus of infection. So I recommend to disinfect your mobile device regularly.
Right, a very valid point there.
Yep.
Professor, UK researchers have reportedly found that the coronavirus loses about 50% of its ability to infect after around 10 seconds or so in the air of a typical office setting. What are the implications of this latest finding?
Which is a very interesting research, but usually we heard the research before. The coronavirus, COVID virus, can be registered in even the paper boxes more than 7 days. Only the years before, the UK, the research they reported, many Korean people are shocked about it because 택배, this is a quick delivery system in Korea. That's why everybody is shocked and we're afraid of touching the box needle, but we forget it. Why? Because virus, there are ability of the infected, yes, around the 10 seconds to the minute, will be very weak and doesn't make the infected properly. But anyway, ventilation is very important because outbreak in outdoor is very rare cases, but most of the serial and the cluster infection happening in indoor activities. So this is one of the interesting research, but mainly what the Professor Kim will explain us, we have to follow from the principle. So the mobile device, one of the interesting we have to take care of as well. Let's look back to the principle how to prevent it. Wear the mask properly, and also avoid the cloudiness and keep on the ventilation. This is help. But we have to listen to this interesting research report. But we have to keep on the principle.
Right, because the study has yet to be peer-reviewed, though. Professor Kim, it has been found that COVID-19 patients compared to flu patients face greater risks of hair loss and dementia. Could you tell us more about this?
It's a report from the database from Health Insurance Review and Assessment Service. And they compared influenza patients of 2017 to 2018, which was a number more than 200,000. They compared with the COVID-19 cases of 2020. The number was only 20,000, so it's about 10 times less than the influenza. Before making any conclusions, we have to know that the half of the influenza patients was less than 19 years of age, and COVID-19 were older. So if you look at the problems they have, you can easily conclude that that can happen. And when we are exposed to a virus, a virulent virus, there's a disrupted immune response to that initial insult, and that might end up as a cytokine storm, which can happen to influenza, SARS, MERS, and COVID-19. And there are other frequent medical situations happening this. So most of the chronic sequelae after COVID-19 are related to this situation called cytokine storm, mostly affecting the lung. I do welcome this report from this Health Insurance Review and Assessment Service because I'm very, I'm trying to update myself every time of the reports from Israel, because the same kind of research they do and they put out, and it's a global hot news topic, because everybody's interested in what's happening in Israel, because they are the front leader of vaccination. What happens after the vaccination, and do we need the third shot or even the fourth? So if we can have our own data of South Korea, it is mostly welcomed, and I wish that we can be brave enough to share informations more quickly, so every doctors can understand what is going on and what to do next.
Right, of course. Professor Yu, some pundits believe that the Omicron outbreak in Europe and the US, as my colleague Suwon mentioned earlier, will peak sometime around this month or in the weeks ahead. What is your forecast?
Well, so European countries, they are facing on the record high than ever before, in the US as well. So my little concern is Omicron, even the weak, and then other variant, but can be hit to some people. So this is the time to change of idea and the strategy against the COVID-19, because cannot be avoided 100%, because this is data to show us how we can smartly, run through over these two waves. Because when we are facing on the wave in the ocean, if you get to break through, it's very difficult. How to smoothly turn on the back of the big waves, which means changing of the strategies, how to having this Omicron, because Korea's big wave is not started yet. Japan is facing on now. So probably after the summer holiday, probably Korea will be facing about it. That's why now is the time to change to the strategy and the open discussion with the people and the health authority and medical experts, and also general people, and also small, medium enterprise learning the people. So anyway, Omicron hits wave the same as like US and Europe and Korea soon, but we have to listen how they smartly passing through and how to minimize the victims from this big wave. But anyway, time to change ideas.
Right, and we'll speak more about those ideas in a bit. But Professor Kim, staying with the situation in the US and Europe, now the rampant rebounds in these two places are hindering containment efforts as authorities focus on treatment. This itself is an inevitable reality, right?
Yeah. As Professor, you mentioned, I think it's the time we have to think again. And if I review briefly what happened through this pandemic, first, there was no vaccine, and we have to deal with this pandemic with social distancing, the only plan that we had. And about that time, we understood who are in high risk. So after we got vaccination, the case fatality rate dropped dramatically, and we hope that this vaccine could bring the herd immunity, but it was not so successful, and the breakthrough infection happened. And soon we're going to have a medicine like Paxlovid, and that's a good news. But we are dealing with Delta variant and Omicron variant right now. So this infection is spreading to a younger age group, doubling every 2 to 3 days. So are we going to focus on the total number of confirmed cases, or are we going to focus on the case fatality, the high-risk group? If we want to focus on that high-risk group, I think we already know what we have to do and what is our priority. And I wish that the new strategy will be based on scientific evidences.
Right, and talking about strategy and going back to what you mentioned, Professor Yu, how or what proposals do you have with regard to perhaps a shift in our strategy against COVID-19 as we wait for the next outbreak led by Omicron?
Well, fortunately, until now, Korean government depends against the Omicron variants well. That's why we don't have a big wave. Yes, we have time. Yeah, we save the time because European country and US, they just immediately back attacked from Omicron. That's why couldn't handle it, anything. But we have time to handle it. So time to change the idea. First, if Omicron, this is not serious than other variants, let's change the thing to open the discuss with the general people think about this is like influenza. But it's very new influenza. That's why we need the kind of big agreement is the all of the society or different part. So let's start to open it. Don't count the positive cases every day. But the government be noticed a weekly basis the cases of the victim. I'm sorry about the victims. And then we highly recommend to the enforcement of the vaccination later for the risk groups. Anyway, also some people who are fully vaccinated, fully follow the Korean government regulation, yes, still keep on free. But who have their own idea, because own decision, wear a mask, have a vaccination, yes, it's a free own will. But who are out of regulation, but if a case of the confirmed case of COVID-19, response of this is a personal. Change the idea, change the mind. Because government doesn't cover to influenza patient for all. Yes, that's why government recommend for more than 65 years old over and less than 12 years or younger, having the good opportunity to have a free vaccination for influenza, and we followed it. Most of, not all. Why? Clinical decisions from the expertise and the big policies from government and the health authority and political power, but people will not follow it, useless. So, time to open discuss to how ways is this COVID-19, especially Omicron variant or further, is like dealing with influenza or not. Yes, first step is not easy because criticize will be started, but must be turn on the first stone on the stage should be. So yeah, I'm ready to put on the first stone in the stage.
Right, I see. And hopefully the members of the public will make informed decisions.
Yeah.
Professor Kim, how do you respond to calls for all medical facilities to be open to treat COVID-19 patients?
I think that's the mention from Professor Oh Myung-don, who is the committee chairman of the new infectious disease. And we have to understand that we are in the same corona pandemic, but the Omicron variant is quite different from the original Wuhan strain. So let's say that it's a different disease, like some kind of a different severe influenza. But in the hospital, we have to follow the strict quarantine measures because we don't want any kind of disease spreading inside the hospital. And as I work in the emergency department, I see many patients visiting the emergency department because the small local clinics refuse to see the patient because the patient have a fever. I think we have to change this kind of thinking to a new era. I would say from pandemic to endemic. We need a new consensus that the best efforts should be focused on the elderly risk group patients, and we have to find a safe environment for this age group. And there's a big issue about the vaccine pass for students, but if we change our strategy, I think we can change that issue also. As the oral medicine is going to be available soon, I think small clinics can join the fight against this pandemic, just as we did in 2009 flu season. So we have to see what kind of consensus is going to make, how it's going to make.
Right, there are many things to discuss then.
Yeah.
Professor, there are also questions about the adorning of level D protective gear in treating COVID-19 patients. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, the uniforms, they have the message to people. If I wear a mask and wear a uniform like level D, patient, they feel scared, which means this is something unknown virus is coming. I 100% agree with Professor Kim's comments because strains is the scientific evidence that from the beginning, from the China, now we are facing on Omicron is totally different. In my personal opinion, it's totally different. So from the beginning, unknown virus, yes, we have to listen from health authority to protect ourselves, and for everybody, level D should be like astronaut protections. But from now on, we are showing the level Ds to the people, mean Omicron and further variant still serious. But if you level down wearing protects, mean people are feeling better. So in one case, when the MERS outbreak, it was 2015, one case is confirmed in the southern part of the Gyeonggi province. Clinic is all the media say that clinic was visited from MERS patient. No one goes. But this day is Professor Oh Myung-don and recommended to the clinic in the town to start to having the Omicron. We need big agreements about it because Sumi's case is clear. Doctor is put on level D and heard that that clinic is visiting the COVID patients, hospital or clinic. No one's want to go there. So level D should be with who are very close in the integral care unit in the cases that. But now time to change the idea. Level down, carry down. If this Omicron's scientist basis, Omicron is totally different and weaker than others from the origin, yes, time to change the idea.
Right. Professor Kim, come Friday, that is tomorrow, authorities will announce their COVID-19 restrictions for the days ahead, starting from the 17th of January. Now, there are expectations for current restrictions to remain in place. What are your thoughts?
Well, in the recent situation, I realized that we are getting more ICU facilities right now, and as the previous report, I see that the severe cases are decreasing. I hope that it is not because of they pass away. I hope that they get better. And if we do not have no more new severe cases, that would be a best scenario. Anyway, my hospital is preparing many beds to prepare a big outbreak of severe cases. So. But still, we don't have that manpower to run that facility. So one good news, but still there are problems that are not solved yet. Right now, I think we have to start a version 2.0 of this quarantine measures and strategy, as the professor you mentioned. And I'm sure that wearing mask will be a key element. As nobody can get free from that, and there should be a strict rules to protect the high-risk groups, and at the same time, we can lose some rules to prevent negative effects of this quarantine, especially on education and economy, and we wish that we can do more outdoors activity if possible. Yeah, but still, hospitals has to keep the current rules for a while. And as I listened to the mention about level D, it's very difficult to maintain that kind of policy inside hospital. A nurse, we need at least one more nurse to care patients if the patients has to, if we have to wear level D. So if that is easing somehow, I think the burden for the medical facility will be lightened.
Right, and the workers there, of course.
Yeah.
All right, Professor Kim, as always, thank you very much for your thoughts today. Professor Yu, thank you very much for your insights. Right, well, the pandemic is far from over, so do seek to do your part to stay safe. We'll be back with more coverage on Friday. Thank you for now.
When the lantern of wisdom and mercy lights up, a traditional cultural festival unfolds. All hearts connect as one. The wave of traditional lanterns that light up the heart and the world flows. Joy overflows as people experience events. Performances where people come together in harmony. When flowers fall like rain on the world, illuminated with wisdom and mercy, we all become one. And happiness flows as we hold each other's hands. Welcome to Lotus Lantern Festival, Seoul, Korea.